to being bedridden and non-functional almost overnight. So that was like, boom.
I am thrilled to introduce my dear friend, Robby Besner, a dedicated philanthropist and the chief science officer and co-founder of Therasage, a leading company in infrared healing and detoxification technology space. Robby's journey into holistic health began with a personal mission to find alternative treatments for his daughter's Lyme disease. His discoveries led to the development of innovative infrared devices that have since gained a widespread recognition in the healthcare community. Robby's also a respected educator and speaker in the field of infrared medicine, and his passion for natural healing continues to drive his research and development efforts. He's also one of my all-time favorite human beings. Welcome to the summit, Robby.
Wow. I'm not sure what to say after that. I'm very humbled by all of it, but yeah, it's a pleasure being here today and certainly getting a chance to get in front of your community, sharing ideas and just elevating awareness and getting people on board. And yeah, it's great. Great to see you again, Jason.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. Hey there, sorry to jump in here, but really important. At the end of this video, there's a link that gives you access to a bonus package we put together that has all sorts of great resources. Pro-level notes, audio downloads, a fast start guide, as well as some additional resources from our speakers. You will not want to miss out on that. You can also find the link in the description below or at gotmoldsummit.com. So go claim yours today. Now back to the interview. So we're here to talk about mold, of course. So why is infrared relevant to this conversation?
Well, it's kind of like back to that primal healing discussions that we have from time to time. Like mold has been around since the beginning of time, pretty much, right? It's just, organisms that live in nature. And so are the infrared spectrum of light that we harness in many of our products and our delivery systems. And so it's kind of interesting because what I study when I study the balance of nature, like when you have imbalances in your internal environment, your microbiome, it can correct itself if you allow yourself and your body to commune back with nature. That means, good water, good food, good air, and a fair amount of sunlight, touching the earth, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And so, when I think about you and I think about the mold crisis, because in a sense it is that way. And it used to be just confined to coastal cities, but now it's prevalent everywhere. And, from my angle and just back to how you introduced me, I backed into the study of mold years ago because I saw a very interesting relationship between the Lyme parasite and co-infections. And when they get introduced or systemically, someone who has Lyme gets introduced to a moldy environment. And I watched that happen. And so, our whole business and our whole company was built on the back of research about Lyme disease. Detoxification was a big piece, and we'll get to that to answer you. And by the way, I do have a tendency to drift a little bit, so bring me right back onto the road, when I'm answering you, to make sure that I'm cogent in my response to you and your community. But so primal healing is really, to me, about exposing the body to nature the way nature intended us to interact, which I feel we've greatly departed from in today's modern world. We're living in controlled environments. We're living in apartments or homes where air is controlled. We're not getting that proper flow of the external environment and organisms that live there and the internal environment. And so our bodies are basically off balance. And so our company develops technology that harnesses sunlight to bring that into your modern environment. So that's one piece where I feel that it's kind of interconnected. Now, the other side, because I backed into understanding mold, simply because what I noticed was that if you have a Lyme patient that we're working with that seems to have managed their symptoms by lifestyle adjustments and food choices and certain sort of protocols, and they get introduced to a Lyme environment, they go from essentially almost overnight from feeling healthy, certainly while being symptom free, they still have that underlying root cause, but they're able to function, to being bedridden and non-functional almost overnight. That's the impact that mold exposure has on someone that has a chronic Lyme challenge. So that was like, boom. I mean, I forced myself to learn about mold because of our sensitivity to the Lyme community. So I kind of backed into it. Yeah, it's very relevant. And, the angle that we feel is the most appropriate has to do with detoxification. So again, it's not addressing the mold exposure or remediating mold per se, but it's how your body interprets the mold exposure and how that expresses itself in the body's symptoms. And so when we see that, what we're just interested in doing, at least initially, is lowering the toxic load or burden on the body that the mycotoxins and that systemic mold relationship has, so that the patient becomes more functional, while we have time to work on root causes, work on remediation, work on the things that they need to address in order for them to get back to a healthier position.
Perfect. So how does infrared facilitate detoxification? How does that impact things on a cellular level?
Okay. Well, our approach is full spectrum. So we harness the frequencies just the way that the sun delivers it, or nature delivers it to the planet. The sun delivers these frequencies to the planet. There are other companies out there that isolate just one spectrum, which is the near frequencies, and some that do the far frequencies. We're full spectrum. So we actually look at it just the way nature looks at it to the planet. So we try to stay on board with that kind of playbook, so to speak. On detox, what happens is that infrared is a wavelength that penetrates through the body almost seamlessly, because it's a radiant form of heat, or a radiant form, meaning it's a light energy source, as opposed to and one of our most favorite and specialized products is an infrared sauna. And so what we're doing in there is you're sitting in a portable case, and your body is bathing in these full spectrum infrared frequencies. They come in and they penetrate through the insulating layer of fat under your skin, designed to protect your insides from extreme temperatures, either cold or hot. And so now you're sitting in a sauna, like compared to convection heat saunas like steam room or hot rock sauna. There you have the ambient air is elevated to maybe 185 to 200 degrees Fahrenheit. That touches your skin, warms your skin, fights through that insulating layer of fat under your skin to get inside to promote sweating. So we bypass all that, because radiant frequencies, they actually go right through that insulating layer, because the wavelength actually resonates at the same wavelength. By the way, I get a little geeky here, so I don't know if that's
all good.
For your community.
Keep rolling.
Not,
yeah.
Geeky, you like geeky. Okay.
I do.
So it turns out that the infrared spectrum wavelengths harmonize, or at the same wavelengths as the water inside your body. So that, like your fat cell is probably 70 to 72% water. Your brain cell is about 81 to 82% water. Your cells are 97 to 98% water. Okay. So when you get sunlight, the proper wavelengths, the infrared spectrum penetrating through this insulating layer, it goes right into the cell. It creates what's called a bioresonance, or a vibration. And that vibration breaks the covalent bond, or the attraction between the toxin in the tissue, or the toxin in the cell. And so that, if you can imagine that vibration is now breaking loose that bond, breaking loose that toxin, the toxin cascades into your bloodstream. And then it's up to your filtering organs to basically capture that toxin, and then eliminate it somehow.
Beautiful.
So that's kind of how, breaking it down is kind of how that works.
Beautiful. So in terms of the technologies that the Therasage offers right now, you mentioned the portable infrared. You've got a whole portfolio of infrared products, right?
Yeah. Well, we're 25 years in the making. It's one of those, like cliches, that overnight success that took 25 years. So we have accumulated portfolio of applications. There's basically two delivery systems. There's the sauna, which you're bathing in frequencies, and then there's the on-body, we call them healing pads, where you can bring them right to a specific area that you want to rehab. It could be an organ that you want to detox, or a muscle group that you want to lower the stress and create a better a way for that injury, acute injury, or even chronic to heal over time. So we basically have those two different approaches, and then we've created a sundry of accessories, different other kinds of modalities that will interact with infrared to create a synergy, or the modern term is biohack, which is just a modality, and then the stack would be just creating one or two of them in a sequence that could also enhance that wellness journey, whatever, depending on what goal you're going for.
Now, so one of the most common stacks these days, it's very much in vogue, and one of the most visible products that you offer that I enjoy indulging in whenever we get a chance to see each other in person at one of the many conferences that we both attend, exhibit at, speak at, is the cold plunge. And so how does that work with the infrared?
Well, that's what we call contrast therapy. So when I'm looking at things, overall, and that's why I kind of love the whole path that you're on, because, we're living in a very interesting time these days. There's a lot of information out there. There's not a lot of people like you that actually are scientists and take that approach to your business, and particularly your technology. When I look at device development, and that's where I spend most of my time, I kind of look for ways to sort of trick the body technology, the body tech, like your body systems, by using tech on the outside that mimics nature, because no one has time in today's modern world to actually commune with nature anymore. So understanding that's the direction that we're going, and everyone's looking at, wireless devices and everything like, e-bikes and e-cars and all that. So we're surrounded with exogenous frequencies that are man-made, that don't harmonize with the body. So they take the body off kilter in a way. And so I look for technologies out there that actually can stimulate or emulate the way nature has intended us to be. Okay. And so when I look at infrared, before the cold plunge, I didn't know any other technology on the planet that in a half hour could transform your body as quickly as an infrared sauna could, or that infrared sunlight, what sunlight does to the body. We talked about detox, but there are more than 12 of the systems that infrared will influence that the body needs. I'm not talking about like academically. The body needs these wavelengths every day in order for it to be healthy. And I'm talking about like our bodies, but it's really the plant kingdom needs these wavelengths, and the whole animal kingdom. Everything, every life source on planet needs these particular frequencies every day, a certain amount, in order for their systems to work on a optimal level. Now, the cold plunge is another one of those categories, because in 4 minutes, 3 to 4 minutes a day, and the studies show that like 15 minutes cumulatively a week, you could extend your longevity or your health span. You could increase telomeres. You can lower inflammation. There's so many things that does. So here we are, sauna for 30 minutes, cold plunge for 3 minutes. So in less than an hour, I'm not even talking about a workout, but in less than an hour, you can stimulate, augment, support so many of your body systems. It's remarkable to me. So we look at the plunge more or less as a contrast therapy, from hot to cold or cold to hot. And as you probably know, like the Ukrainian, Baltic states, like in Europe, they've been practicing cold hot therapy for centuries. So this isn't new. The only part that's new is the technical approach, and making a device that, as we've done, that is easy, affordable, portable, sort of Therasage's mantra.
Yeah, I love it, and I love the cold plunge. It's something I've been doing for a very, very long time. When I was living in Manhattan, we used to go to the Russian bath, Spa 88, and it was
there you go.
It was fabulous. I've been doing this for 30 years.
You're in Minnesota, so you just have to walk outside and you're cold plunging.
Seriously.
Winter, so.
I just took Sarah for the first time to this place called Sauna Camp down the street, and of course, with Land of 10,000 Lakes, of course they're frozen 6 months out of the year. But it's also Scandinavia Central here. So, we've got just a
Yeah.
a lot of saunas, but this group has got a bunch of wood-fired saunas right on Lake Minnewaska, and they take
Wow.
over a summer
Beautiful.
camp in the winter, and so they cut holes in the ice, and we
Oh
didn't go
my
there
God.
during that phase. It had thawed, but the water was still like 36, 37 degrees.
Wow.
It'll wake you up, who needs a cup of coffee with that? But it was remarkable because, of course, I'm familiar with the detox and all the other benefits that come from this. But Sarah was having a really tough day. I mean, we almost didn't go. And this was something that I had gotten for her as a gift. So we kind of powered through. And we started in the sauna, just to get you ready for the cold. And as we went in, she was tiptoeing in. I just jumped in. That's just my nature anyway. And she took the lead, and I saw her freaking out, hyperventilating. I coached her on the breath a little bit, and then I saw this mood shift, and she began laughing, and it was just this remarkable. I mean, it was something that was just so far beyond. Forget about detox. Forget about all of these things on the cellular level. It was a shift of perspective. Even I don't know how else to describe it. And she later expressed those sentiments as well, and it carried forward for a while. So one of the big problems, of course, people experiencing mold exposure, Lyme disease, emotional dysregulation, depression is linked very tightly to these diseases, disorders, and exposures. And so I love the idea of being able to, since we're all short on time, to be able to bring these technologies into our lives in a way that doesn't force you to go hop in the car, go elsewhere, find time in your schedule, or find an alternative, or find a different climate to spend time, right? So that's,
I get it.
yeah, it's a big
want to
deal.
touch on that. I want to touch on that point just briefly because I've been studying this, and I noticed it when we first launched the Frost. We did it in a public setting. It was in Austin at a conference, and they advertised it. I think actually it's probably the conference. Was it the conference we met at?
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was watching the newbies, the people we had more than 100 people that from the public that came in, all ages, all sizes. I was actually taken back over 2 days. And 39% of them had never gone into cold immersion before. We had 2 tanks at that event. And I was watching the newbies, and I saw there were different kinds of approaches to the experience, as you described about Sarah. Some people just put their toe in to get a feel for it. Some people just went, full throttle like you. Okay, so what I noticed was this. The first thing, besides that first minute of that experience where you're actually getting into breath and you're realizing in your brain that you're not going to die, because most of us have been taught from a very early age, don't touch fire, don't go in extreme cold, period, right? And so here there was this environment where intellectually you are looking to do this, but yet your body is, there's another side of you that's emotionally challenged with what you have, sort of that somatic response or that limbic response of what is it like, am I going to live through this?
Right.
Okay. And so what we call that is limiting beliefs, because you realize after that first minute that you are still living, you're still breathing, you've created this endorphin response and dopamine response in the body that starts to kick in after that first minute. And then you realize, there's this realization that you're living through that, which when they come out after 2 to 3 minutes of this, there is such a breakthrough, emotional breakthrough, not just a physiological one, but the person realizes wow, I just did that. And if I could do that, I could do anything.
Hey there, sorry to jump in here, but really important. At the end of this video, there's a link that gives you access to a bonus package we put together that has all sorts of great resources. Pro level notes, audio downloads, a fast start guide, as well as some additional resources from our speakers. You will not want to miss out on that. You can also find the link in the description below or at gotmoldsummit.com. So go claim yours today. Now back to the interview.
And that part needs to be talked about. I mean, that is just a remarkable, again, back to in 3 minutes, transform your physiology and your emotional state.
Yeah.
I
It's
don't know
powerful.
anything else out there that's like that.
I mean,
It's
unless
terrific.
you want to go to Tony Robbins Firewalk, right? Like that's, but you know, prepare to pay a little more and spend a little more time, right? So
Yeah. And you have time to get to Fiji, playing it costs like an arm and a leg, right? You have to remortgage your house to get there. Yeah, I get it.
but it's a similar kind of an experience where you do go up against these things that you've been taught socially, and also that our body tells us in no uncertain terms, this is a threat, don't do this. And overcoming fear, I think, is probably part of the reason why we're here. And to learn how to love and overcome fear, and which is to say the same thing twice. But to overcome the body is, I'll screw up the quote, but I think it's to conquer yourself is greater than conquering 10,000 men. I think the Buddha said, right? So I think this is one step in that direction. So I love the Frost product, TheraFrost. It's absolutely fabulous. And and at the end, we're going to offer a discount code for anyone who wants to stick around. There's an opportunity for these products, which I'm not. This is not a pitch fest. I want to make this really clear. Most of the people that are in this conference actually don't have anything to sell, and we kept it this way for a reason, because we really want to bring research and researchers, stuff that's literally never available to the consumer unless you dig through stuff the way I do. So we're bringing stuff that the consumer doesn't get, the practitioners don't get, so that we can debunk and demystify a lot of the stuff around mold, because misinformation wildly eclipses the education that's available right now. But in when it comes to Therasage, what you guys do is so important and makes these things so accessible, that I really want to make sure that we adequately promote this so that people can get their hands on these technologies. So
well, I appreciate that, and you're taking a much different approach. And I'm not looking for sales. I'm just looking to talk to your community about the benefits. And
absolutely,
I hope you would choose us. But the truth is that this technology exists there. People can take charge of their own lives and their own healthcare, and they can do it in the comfort of their homes. And they can see an incredible benefit that'll keep them out of hospital and keep them from getting caught up in that whole Western daisy train, right?
Absolutely.
Hospital, medications, clinic, surgery, all that. We can avoid all of that. It's just healthy habits and understanding that's available, which is, I think, the principle behind your summit. And understanding that, there are companies out there doing it that are bona fide. And I appreciate you being, having us on. Because I know that you curate every single interview and each person that's going to be here, because you want them to be authentic, realistic, and their technologies or their research is evidence-based, which is very important in today's world.
It's crucial. And candidly, we've even had a couple of interviews where there were a couple of things said that didn't land within the factual regions. And those won't be airing, and so we're very careful about that. And so thank you for saying. When I speak, I often talk about the 4 basic human needs: air, water, food, and shelter. And you very accurately said, sunlight is also one of those. And now I talk about the 5 basic human needs because of you. And so air, water, food, shelter, and sunlight. And infrared, of course, and the full spectrum, extremely important. We have a society that's afraid of the sun. Sunscreen and sunglasses, and then there's all sorts of conjecture and theories around the idea that limiting actual sunlight by putting these filters on us is actually causing unintended consequences, right? Vitamin D dysregulation, things like that. Do you want to speak to that at all?
Well, certainly. Everybody kind of lumps sunlight all together. But if you look at the way that the electromagnetic frequencies are actually segregated, and this is a science. So you, from left to right, you go gamma waves, X-rays, UV spectrum, which these are invisible frequencies to the light, to the eye. Then you have natural light, which is what we do see in visible light. That's the rainbow. And then right next to that is the infrared spectrum, microwaves, and then radio waves. So that's kind of the full range. Now, UV light is a different wavelength that's measured in nanometers. And it does do some really great things for the body, changing the pH so that you're a little bit more alkaline. It does stimulate your melanocyte, which is the tanning and or the color that gives you skin color in your skin, and that also is the same site that where vitamin D3 is actually manufactured. So we actually go through like a photosynthesis phase, just like plants. So when it comes from the sun, it's actually D1. When it touches the skin, it's D2, and then phytochemically, we transform the D2 into D3, which is the usable form of vitamin D, which is responsible for more than 1/3 of the body functions. So more than 2,000 functions need vitamin D in order to be present. In order for, so it actually acts like a hormone more than a vitamin, even though it's called a vitamin. And so the challenge here is that UV frequencies, among the scale of UV frequencies, those ranges, there's actually some frequencies in there that are actually harmful. The 420 to 430 range are harmful, and overexposure can affect and deteriorate your DNA and your RNA, which is your genetic material, causing genetic malfunctions and potential mutant cells. So that's where that comes from, and the fears about carcinoma and different kinds of skin-related cancers from overexposure. Now, what's interesting, what we've noticed in our research is that in the balance of nature again, when you get too much exposure to UV and you're in the IR infrared spectrum, infrared is the healing function. So if you get overexposed and you actually do damage with UV, you can heal by being in infrared long enough for you to actually, offset that. And so if you think about it, back in the day, right, like the day of Jesus, Moses, and Buddha, we lived in caves, we lived on the land, we lived in tents, we were nomadic, generally. We're talking about the culture, different cultures on the planet, and we were exposed to sunlight all day. So we were out the guys were out in the field, basically hunting, right, for food. And so they were overexposed to UV, but they were also balanced by being in infrared spectrum long enough to actually offset or fix any of the overexposure to the UV. In today's world, we don't get that. We get overexposed to UV, we get sunburned, we get skin damage, and we don't stay in the sun long enough to get the infrared to actually heal whatever damages were done. And so we've stumbled into, through the whole Lyme pursuit, the fact that the infrared spectrum is the one that actually is all the healing aspects. And so we just lean into all that part of it. But there is a relationship between the two of them. They're closely related on the electromagnetic scale in terms of the nanometers. They do very different things. And we love UV from the aspect of balancing the pH in your body and producing vitamin D3. But it does turn out that, and they've done studies on this, Jason, that where more than half of the population cannot take oral D3 and to elevate their D3 levels. And so the optimal way to get it is through your skin, as nature designed it to be. But then we have the challenge of the amount of time and when you're in UV long enough for you to get that. And there's a program out there called D-Minder, an app you can get for your phone. It's free. And it actually syncs to your GPS. So it shows the app where you are located in terms of latitude and longitude on the planet. And then it will tell you exactly how much UV light you need, minimal, to get the vitamin D supplement, natural supplement to your body on a daily basis, which is amazing to me. So, now in Florida, between the hours of 11 and about 12:31 is when UV light is most present. prevalent. And then after between 1 and dusk is when the infrared spectrum is most prevalent. And so if you're in the sun, get overexposed to UV, and you can hang out in the IR or the infrared area long enough, then you're going to get that balance through the day. Of course, if you do a little supplementation and you get a little natural light, that's the best combination. And then, like if you're in the tundra area of the country, which is where you live, now you've only got, natural sunlight or summer sunlight, maybe 2.5 to 3 months out of the year. And so you guys got to soak it up during that time. And the other time you have to look for, other ways to supplement in order for you to get what you need.
I listened to, thank you for all of that. This is great information. I'm going to have to go download that D-Minder app, because certainly we do have a narrow window to get our D. And it is tricky. And also the point that it acts more like hormone. That was an epiphany for me when I first learned this, that we call it a vitamin, but it is so critical in so many functions. And, I forget who told me to listen to it, but there's an epic podcast between Jack Kruse and Huberman. Have you heard about this? It's like 7 hours.
It's Battle of Titans, those two.
and he talked a lot about the relationship between contact lenses even, and our our optics, not to mention the glass in our windows and things like that, blocking certain wavelengths of UV, and how that impacts the melanin in our eyes and the receptors.
Yes.
Way above my pay grade, but it was extremely illuminating, pun intended. Yeah. And it was one of those things where I just think, you look at all of the dysfunction we have, all of the cancers and autoimmune disease, and of course, we're all locked up in our homes. And I talk about how we every day, we spend 90% or more of our time indoors, often now in the same building, rebreathing the same air 20,000 times a day. That's a repetitive stress. But the lack of direct exposure to sunlight is a different issue that can only compound the problems that we are causing due to poor indoor air quality and the toxification. Forget about our food supply. I mean, we can just go on and on and on. These things all just compound and are cumulative. And it's often just as simple as, for our purposes, open your windows or go take a walk, right? Get outside. And now timing that walk, and by the way, take off your sunglasses, possibly even your contact lenses, right? Now, is there specifically an area of the body also? I've read that, this is not just something you want to, it's not facial exposure, right? There are specific areas that you actually need to receive some of this light. Is that not the case?
Yeah. I can't believe you brought that up. That's kind of like really diving deep, and I love that. Generally, if you think about it, the areas of your body that are light deprived, so like in your armpit, for instance, or the soft underbelly of your forearm, that doesn't get that direct sunlight. Those cells are all the same in terms of your melanocytes and photoreceptors. But if you could expose those to sunlight, you're going to get a much quicker reaction, because generally they're closed, or your arm is covering that area of your body. And so you're not getting that direct exposure that you might normally get. And so those are the areas that I feel would definitely be quicker to stimulate and generate that D3 and the benefits of getting that natural light. So yeah, there are other areas too below the belt, but I don't want to go there today. And I'm sure people that want to research and talk about those areas too, and the cultist type people that like to expose those areas. For me, I'm okay with my armpits right now and everything above my belly button. But truth be told, yeah, the areas that, like when you're clothed, you remember, like your skin is your largest organ, right? So, and it's an accentuated breathing organ. So it actually brings in environmental toxins and poisons, and, when you're bathing and all that stuff. And it's also the area that the organ that, is so beneficial in capturing light and interpreting that light in terms of the biochemical exchange in the body.
Beautiful. Yeah, no, it is kind of an entertaining subculture below the belt, and it's Anyone who wants to read between the lines there can go do your own research on that. But it's there's some interesting data around that for sure. And then also in the same vein, Huberman has popularized the idea of morning sunlight. You want to unpack that a little bit for the benefits of those who don't have the time to dig into Huberman's exhaustive library?
The first half hour to 45 minutes of sunlight, and the last half hour to 45 minutes, they call it sun gazing. It's incredibly beneficial, but you don't just jump in. You're looking at the direct sun, and most, midday, you don't want to do that because you could really mess up your eyes and your retina and your optic nerve. And most people will tell you not to do that. But the early sun and the late sun is perfectly safe for you to do that. And you start off with simply 10 seconds, 15 seconds, and you can work yourself up to a minute to two. And that early sun, again, it stimulates your optic nerve. And that is one nerve that's the closest to your brain. And so you're now firing your whole neurological system and self-regulating your autonomic nervous system by looking at that early sun. And it's kind of like I've gotten into it. I'm down in Florida, and so I get up very early, like 4:35 in the morning generally. And so part of my joy is to watch the sunrise as often as I can during the week. And so I'm actually using that time to just set my intentions. I meditate. I watch the sunrise a few times a week. I take my bike. I'm a cyclist, so I go down to the beach and I ride on the sand. So I have one of those fat bikes with big tires. I go there at 4:35 when it's dark. I watch the sun. I ride till the sun rises. I watch that sunrise, and then I jump into the ocean. And then I get back to my lab, my house, my work by 7:38 in the morning. The world's just waking up, and I've lived almost a full life of that day. Beautiful. So, but that I actually look towards capturing that early sun every morning.
That's absolutely beautiful. What a wonderful lifestyle you've built for yourself.
Well, it's all of us just fitting in the things that we need to stay optimal. I'm in my 70s now, and I feel like I'm in my 20s, so like, how do you maintain that optimal level of wellness, So it's like, anyway, so I just have created healthy habits. I've figured out routines, and I don't run to the gym. I created kind of a gym and a pattern within my house. So I take my garbage when I run my garbage down to the end of my driveway, and I run back. And when I run back, I do 20 push-ups. So like, I'm creating a little gym or routine within my daily day. It takes minutes, but I'm not carving out 2 hours a day to get dressed, go to the gym, come, do that thing, come back. I kind of do it within my lifestyle, which I think it's maybe a little bit more modern approach. And for people like post-COVID, a lot of people are now home-centric and they're doing virtual work. And you can get lazy quickly, or you can take a different approach to just, do the things, the tech that we talk about. And certainly, like for you, like if you're home-based or you're virtually based, your technology molds consciousness, and maintaining the integrity of your internal, external environments, your home environment, is super critical. So, very relevant to today's world.
Yeah. So what this sort of distilling this is, we all live in buildings and breathe air. We all spend too much time indoors, which means that we're not getting enough sunlight. We're not getting enough exposure to outdoor microbes. And so in essence, we've distanced ourselves from nature, and then we're seeing this huge, unsustainable increase in asthma, allergies, autoimmune diseases. There are over 100 autoimmune diseases. This is not something our ancestors ever had to deal with, as well as cancers, autism, all these things. And so, of course, we advocate for a healthy indoor environment. And of course, Therasage is in the business of providing devices and technologies to help sort of hack these things so that you don't have to, relocate or, invest tremendous amounts of money and time in seeking these things out, in either nature or in, facilities. But then in the same breath, no pun intended, this can mostly be dealt with by going outside.
Hey there, sorry to jump in here, but really important. At the end of this video, there's a link that gives you access to a bonus package we put together that has all sorts of great resources. Pro level notes, audio downloads, a fast start guide, as well as some additional resources from our speakers. You will not want to miss out on that. You can also find the link in the description below or at gotmoldsummit.com. So go claim yours today. Now back to the interview.
Just and keep being thoughtful about the time that you're going to take when you take the garbage out. This might be a chance to raise your heartbeat a little bit and, just fit these things in and just be thoughtful of the fact that, yeah, we're all busy. We're all too busy. It's one of the diseases of our culture. But if we just be a little bit more thoughtful, we can make all of this work. And then more importantly, prioritizing, and this is what I love about your lifestyle, is prioritizing well-being as opposed to just like fitness. And I think the distinction between well-being and fitness is something that probably isn't as promoted as much as it should be. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we could go down so many rabbit holes. I think I'd like to touch base briefly on EMF, which is a very controversial subject. And it's controversial because I think there are a lot of hucksters, and there's a lot of unsubstantiated science, but indisputably we are electrical creatures. The physicists, as well as the spiritual world, all agree that this is all energy, and that it's all vibration, it's all frequency. So when it comes to healthy living indoors, what should people be aware of when it comes to EMF?
Well, first off, electromagnetic fields is a man-made event. And it's generated from an electrical device or a battery-operated device that offers alternating current. And so we're generating an energy field that oscillates about 80 times higher than your body's natural energy field. And so what happens when you take a person, and you immerse them in an EMF environment, that could be a hot spot at Starbucks. Your body field is now being drawn up towards the higher oscillating field, which basically throws off your own body electric or your own body natural energy field. So that creates a cascade of neurological dysfunction because, imagine, well, here in the US we have 110, 120 current. And in Europe, we have 220, 240 current. If you take a 220 device, if you take a 110 device and you plug it into a 220 socket, it's going to blow that device up. I mean, it'll short it out, it'll blow up, it'll probably catch on fire. Okay? So that's what we're talking about. You're taking a lower energy field, our body field, that's close to the ground, close to earth, close to nature, and the plant and animal kingdom. And you're looking at plugging that into a higher oscillating frequency. And so it's throwing off our neurological system, the way we communicate, nerves that bring messages from the brain to cause the body muscular system to function, and basically all of your organ systems to function. That information is coming from command central, your brain, and it's being transferred through a low current electrical current. It's actually the synapse between the different nerves. That little spark of information is being transferred all the way down your spinal column to every area of your body to function. Now, the disruptor is these exogenous frequencies. They come in, that's 3G, 5G, those micro towers outside your house or down the road. You think that there's just 5G on that? If it's activated, the military and the government is using 7 and 10G on the same microwave towers. So we are swimming in frequencies that basically are not natural, and the body responds to it. Now, the area where I think it's most germane falls into your area, because what we've noticed is that when a body is immersed in electromagnetic fields, it activates all the microorganisms inside of you. So what does that mean? The parasites, the molds, right? The viruses, the bacterias, some of them live in harmony, but when they're activated, it's like they're being supercharged. You're giving them now nitro fuel. So they're multiplying faster, they're using more of your body resources, and they're pooping. They're creating toxins in the body. All of that stuff is dialed up. I haven't quite figured out, because of the ranges of electromagnetic fields across the planet, I haven't figured out a universal number to say, well, when you're in EMF, that you've gotten 20% more activity from microorganisms. But it is significant, and it can be measured in your blood. When you draw blood, those poisons, you can actually measure them. And so because EMF varies from place to place and the body interprets it differently from person to person, it's hard to come up with big numbers, but I can tell you it's significant.
Now, I mean,
Yeah.
Continue, please.
No, go ahead.
No, I mean, I've heard a lot of people talk about EMF and mold in buildings, suggesting that EMF stimulates mold growth as well as production. Of course, you need moisture. So let's be clear. First, you need to have the most important part of the metabolic process present. But I've yet to see any studies on that. Are you aware of any studies on this, or is this something that's still sort of?
No, it's still a little fringy. Okay, I think that the global or overarching discussion is the way the body interprets these wavelengths, and it does vary from person to person. There's more than 60,000 microorganisms that live in harmony in our gut, and our gut is responsible for close to 80% of your immune system. Is that balance? Okay. So what we're really discussing now is the imbalance. Whenever there's a change in your body chemistry that fosters the growth of cancer, the growth of mold, the growth of Lyme, parasite, any of those, that's the imbalance is what creates the symptom and the toxicity surrounding the symptom and inflammation that's associated with that. And so we've just taken the detox approach to lower all of that load, that burden, to just give everyone, the person, more of their life, and the practitioners that are helping that person get back on track, time to be able to look at the root causes of these things and remediate their home from mold, if that's one of them, and so forth, But the crux of it is the companies that make these devices that throw out these signals are being guided by the FTC and the FCC, the Trade Commission and the Communication Commission, government bodies. And there's no regulators that sit on those panels that actually decide what level of these frequencies are allowable for these devices to be made. There's no health person on those committees. They're not thinking about how this wavelength may hurt us. They're just thinking about how they can make a faster router or a faster, like 3G, 5G, so that people can game faster, they can download faster, and so forth. They're just looking at the joys that, there's a great book written by Darren Oline called Fatal Conveniences. Mm-hmm. Okay. And he's a dear friend of mine. I love his book. I love his whole messaging, but he goes into this in depth. So I would recommend that to everybody that's listening in today to take a look at that book and look at his work. But he talks specifically about the chemicals in our homes that affect us, and certainly about electromagnetic fields and how that affects us. And so it is really on a grand scale. And besides the fact that, again, it's throwing off our natural immune system, because now we've got another outside stimulant that doesn't harmonize with our bodies and with the way our bodies have naturally been synchronized with nature, the planet and the sun and the earth and so forth. And so, yeah, I think it's a big problem. I think it's a problem moving forward. But with every problem, just like what you've come up with your company, there are solutions. And so we have come up with devices. They're little chips. They're harmonized. You can put them on your phones. You can put them, on your laptop. You can put them on in your car, if it's an electric car, that will balance out the wavelengths so that your body is still in harmony. And again, it's affordable. These devices, they're chips, they're stickers, they're holograms. They work great. And again, we're a science-based company, so we vet everything with various different cross currents of testing to make sure that the physiology is in place.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for illuminating that as well. So, we skipped over, or I should say, we glossed over how you actually got into this space during the introduction. But I think it would be useful for our listeners to actually understand how and why you started Therasage.
Oh, that was 25 years back plus. My oldest child, my daughter, contracted Lyme disease. 25 years ago, we didn't have virtual medicine or the way that we do practice medicine today. We had the top Lyme literate doctor in New York. We were living in Florida. We would travel up every 6 weeks. He would dial in a change in a protocol, which was generally a lot of cocktails of different antibiotics, very caustic to the body, but were targeted to attack the Lyme and the co-infections that are always or generally associated with Lyme disease. And so he was working his end of the block. And what I noticed quickly, I have a healthcare background. And so what I noticed quickly was that the dynamic between the patient and the doctor, you see the doctor maybe for an hour or two, once, in this case, every 6 weeks. The rest of the time, the emphasis or the onus and burden is on the patient and or the family structure around them. And so I decided 25 years ago to get proactive. I am a homeopath or a natural. I'm an integrated functional practitioner. And so I kind of looked at and unpacked the way my daughter was expressing herself, high levels of toxicity, inflammation. She had body pain. She had cognitive challenges. And so I just somehow focused on the best methods to detox and discovered that there are frequencies of sunlight, which is the infrared spectrum, that will actually mobilize all the toxins in your body. So that was revelating because 25 years ago, infrared was only being used in the healthcare area by sports medicine doctors to help ball players that were injured to lower their pain and to get to heal faster so they get back on the field. So I looked at that and I said, wow, that's a dynamic I can lean into. I organized a trip, went to China for 3.5 months, saw 65 factories, found 2 that I wanted to work with, started developing devices, mostly for self-servingly for our daughter to help herself. Her doctor saw that she was getting some real results, and they basically asked for us to start making these devices for them, which was really the genesis of our company and our moving forward.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, these things that are unpleasant in our lives oftentimes yield these just incredible new awarenesses. And the most interesting people that I know are the ones who have taken those experiences and invested them into creating products and services and innovations to help improve the quality of other people's lives. And I think that's these are my favorite people, right? And so that's why one of the many reasons that you're one of them. So I often say that the best gifts don't come wrapped in pretty paper.
Yeah. And where we thought it was about Julia, turned out to be a vision for everyone. I had no idea that the Lyme area would grow as big, and it's really pandemic in its size, but it's not getting the same notoriety as some of the other pandemics that sell newspapers and panic people as we've experienced in the past. But it is very prevalent, and the challenge with Lyme is that it mimics many other diseases, so it's often misdiagnosed. And so you got someone with the symptoms of MS, but they really have Lyme, so they're being treated for MS. And so they're wrongly being treated for Lyme, being treated for what they don't have. It's just a horrible, horrible combination. And again, like I said earlier, when you get a Lyme patient and they're influenced by systemic mold in their home, then it really makes a big difference. And I believe that there is there's a relationship between mold as an organism and also the Lyme parasite and the co-infections. And we've had some researchers that have gone deep on this. And so some of that new science is coming out now. But in particular, there are only a few kinds of organisms that will pierce the blood-brain barrier. And Lyme, as a spirochete, there's only 3 known spirochetes organisms on the planet, Lyme being one of them. And Lyme is one that can go through. But we have noticed a significant difference in the amount of Lyme. It's called Lyme brain or Lyme encephalitis. And so Lyme patients that have mold exposure are more prevalent to have Lyme encephalitis. And so there's something about the mold combination with Lyme that makes it a much clearer or faster pathway to bring that organism, the Lyme organism and co-infections into the brain.
Yeah, in addition to that, it's the same inflammatory pathway. You end up with cytokines, so it's like having too many of the same cars on the same highway, and all the pollution that comes along with that, right? So there's just this incredible sort of overload. When I don't think we've ever talked about this, but I had Lyme, or at least I was diagnosed with it. It's still unclear whether I had it, and what I can tell you is that the antibiotics did some probably more harm to me back then, because it was very early. This is in the early 90s, and so it was a lot of experimental treatments. And my doctor was Dr. Bleiweiss, who was controversial because Lyme was not recognized as a legitimate illness at the time, and
right.
And so he actually had this awareness after seeing people coming in with facial paralysis and things that again looked a lot like MS, so he had a friend who was a mortician, and so he was able to arrange sort of surreptitiously under the cloak of darkness access to the morgue, and they went in and they took samples from the synovial fluid in patients who had died from MS. And what he found were giant spirochetes.
Yeah.
And so he went and began talking about this, and the AMA came in and they essentially shut him down. And then he was dealing with this, the full weight and force of the entire establishment. And he ultimately ended up committing suicide because he was being persecuted so aggressively. And I think he was doing important work. We've seen a lot of doctors lose their licenses, many of which actually should, but there are at least as many who are doing good work that just bump against the establishment, and he was one of them. He was some of the collateral damage there. So this is something that's obviously near and dear to me as well, because I was Lyme and mold as well. And so yeah, this is one of the many things that you and I share in common when it comes to this journey that we're on.
Totally get it. And I get that. And the story you're telling is unfortunately, very more common than not. Yeah. And many of the practitioners that, it's part of the system, I suppose. I don't want to get too political here, but basically, they take an oath, and the oath to when you're a practitioner, you have certain guidelines, and they're set up for very particular reasons. And so, but in today's world, that's kind of why I lean into the integrative functional practitioner, because they're looking outside those sort of lines or boundaries at other alternative accepted kinds of interventions or modalities, treatments, protocols that will work within their guidelines. And so they can bring in, maybe kinds of tinctures or applications that are done by the Indian culture, like East Indian culture, or by the Eastern cultures that have worked for thousands of years there. They can combine them with their approaches here and find that they're getting a little bit greater result than just the kinds of protocols that we have set up here. And so that's the direction I think is a little bit more modern. and encompasses, world knowledge of healthcare, not just what we see or how we define it here in the Western approach to medicine. And I appreciate in the process of that, you have these doctors, like you just articulated, that was on to something, but because it was a little bit too outside the norm for the politics involved in healthcare here, they get scrutinized and put on some whack list, and I mean, it just goes on and on. And I appreciate it. Like it's part of the information flow that we have these days, Jason. And unfortunately, there's good and bad information. And I mean, this is something that I'm passionate about, because particularly if you're sick, like yourself, like mold and Lyme, that combination, and you're not well enough, you're not thinking well enough, you go on the internet, you start to research, and you get deluged with all of these, kind of information. It can be very overwhelming. And it's that deer in the headlight, so that's why I love evidence-based stuff. That's why I love the work that we're doing, because we may not be, moving as fast as other companies or growing as fast. We believe people over profit is more important to us. And so if we get there a little slower, but we do it methodically, we don't have to look over our shoulders. We don't have to worry about the politics. We stay in our lane. We work with both Eastern and Western practitioners. We're looking at it holistically. I just think that is an approach that might be a little bit more modern and more appropriate in today's world.
I couldn't agree more. Listen, Western medicine has its place, right? And one of my good friends who's a former MD, I should say he's an MD. He's a non-practicing MD, but he's also got a doctorate in Oriental medicine. And he refers to his former colleagues on the Western side as the prescribing physicians.
Okay.
And
okay.
And so it's an interesting distinction. But yet there is, there are gaps on both sides. And I think, properly done, people talk about integrative medicine. Why not borrow from the wisdom of both sides, so there is that. To do any one thing to exclude wisdom from any source is to miss out on the benefits that come from it. So yeah, I think this has been a fabulous conversation, Robby. So as we start to wind this down, you had, before we hit record, mentioned that you had a free bonus for our listeners, a discount code and a link for some additional resources and things like that. So what do we have?
So I think we're going to use Got Mold 24. So that's going to be for a special bundle that we'll put together for just the people that are joining. We're also offering an ebook that focuses on detoxification, on the benefits of infrared and the different applications and protocols that you can use and how easily you can get this integrated into your home. So the bundle is going to be incredible. And I know that, I don't know how you did this, Jason. You just got to Melody, who does that stuff on our side, the co-founder of Therasage, created a bundle and an opportunity for everybody that's viewing the summit to be able to exercise, combining your technology with our technology, including the many of the white papers and other things that we have created here to get a better understanding for people that want to take a deeper dive. But really, we're just complementing the road that you're on. And again, we appreciate being here and having the opportunity to share our ideas with you and your community, and also offering special discounts and bundles that they couldn't normally get anywhere else. And so, yeah, just Got Mold 24. And then they can see all the benefits and get a chance to take advantage of the opportunity.
Beautiful. I think we've got a landing page or a link here, which is therasage.com/gotmoldsummit, which we'll also be making available in the notes here. But if you just go to therasage.com, the discount code, which I believe will be site-wide, is GotMold24 for anyone who wants to enjoy many of the innovations that you guys have developed. And so thank you very much for that. Thank you for the generosity, and thank you, Melody, for putting all of that together.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, no, I deeply appreciate it. And then I guess in closing here, how can people find you? Of course, Therasage.com, but you've got quite a social media presence too.
Yeah, it's Therasage Infrared is our Instagram, and it's one of my favorite things, Jason. In the morning, I look at, I just love the excitement that our community has in showing their different, our devices and how they're using them. And my very special ones are when they bring their children in or their pets, like cats and dogs. And, when you can get an untrained animal, to gravitate to the wavelengths, it's that innocence, the child of the innocence. Mm-hmm. We're not teaching our animals to do that. This is a extraction of nature, of sunlight, right? And when you can get an animal to respond, and I'm always amazed by this. I'm thinking, how are they so smart? They're doing this innately because they see and they know that they need these wavelengths to be healthy. Yet we're so busy kind of ignoring what our body is saying and what our needs, because we're focusing on our families or our work and things, our busy, lifestyle. And so when I see that, it brings me extra joy, because then I see that I'm not just impacting the adult in the family, but I'm also impacting the next generation. And I think just like with your consciousness and the things that you do, if we had more people aware of the challenge with mold and could use your devices to detect them early and remediate earlier, people will be healthier. And if you grow up in a household that has that understanding, and then you can relate that to your kids, then they grow up understanding that's important, and they relate it to their kids. And that's where I think you have a real impact and change on society. And you're a thought leader in that regard. There's no doubt about it. Not just in developing a very unique device and an application, but just the consciousness and raising awareness in a category that's been around since the beginning of time, but yet is becoming so much more relevant in today's world. And that's really what we try to achieve in our little category too. So I love, our relationship and friendship, and just the connection between what we're doing and you're doing in changing the world.
Well, I mean, it's an honor and a privilege to be here with you, to have you here today. And I thank you for being you, Robby. And thank you for all of your contribution to the greater good. I'm really, truly grateful to know you. And I'm so glad that you could share a tiny sliver of your wisdom with our audience on the summit today.
Great, Jason. Thank you again for having me.
Until next time.
Hey, before you go, in case you haven't done it already, go to gotmoldsummit.com to claim your bonus package today. It's filled with all sorts of great stuff. Audio downloads, pro level notes, fast start guide, and some additional gifts from our speakers, all absolutely free. So you won't want to miss out on that. Again, go to gotmoldsummit.com to claim your bonus package. You can also find the link in the description below.